Hello, everyone, and welcome to Connect Church Discipleship Podcast. We are in Season 5, Episode number 6. We're looking at our emotions and relationships in this season, and right now we're in a series on forgotten emotions. We're talking about how to practice our emotions, and today we're going to look at practicing anger. And to learn all about that, Angela's with us again, so thank you for being here.
Yeah.
All right. So we can't always control when our emotions come up, but we can practice them in healthy ways, and that's kind of something we've been trying to learn here. And we talked about grief, lament, celebration. Today, anger. So is anger good or bad?
Trick question. I think it often falls into the category of bad, but there are times that it's necessary and can even be beneficial.
Yeah. And I think that's what makes it so challenging too, right? Because it's almost like this automatic no, but like maybe there is a yes there. So we want to practice that. Listen to Ephesians 4:26. In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you're still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold. And there's three main words in the New Testament Greek for anger, and they each mean something a little different. So just recap it real quick. First is the word thumos, which means like outbursts of anger. Whenever humans are described this way in Scripture, it's never good, although God's wrath is described this way as well. But I like to think of thumos as like this idea of like a rocket ship, like it just explodes, it goes real fast, that type of anger. Then there's orge anger, and this is one of the words that's used in Ephesians 4. In your anger, in your orge, do not sin. So this is clear. There's some points where anger is not automatically sin. It might lead us there, but it's not automatic right off the bat. But yet, in Ephesians 4, later on, verse 31, we're told to put away orge anger. So we kind of have to know like when to do. So if thumos is this rocket ship, orge is kind of like when something important to us is being threatened. So the illustration I'll give for that is like a mama bear when I gotta protect my cubs. Like, and so it's like, hey, I ain't trying to do nothing, but if you want to go, like we're gonna go, kind of thing, right? So we got thumos, this explosion, orge, hey, something's being threatened, I'm gonna react to it. And then the last one we have is paragismos. And this is the word that's used in the second half of Ephesians chapter 4. Don't let the sun go down on this type of anger. And so it's this anger that's suppressed, is beneath the surface. And so if thumos is the rocket ship and orge is the mama bear, paragismos is like the landmine. Like you step on it, it might go, or you might be able to avoid it. And so the point of all that is we shouldn't like be mad that we get angry. We shouldn't get angry that we get angry, right? Like it's not wrong to feel anger, but yet anger does have the potential to lead us to sin. So we need to be very careful about how we practice our anger. Thumos anger is probably going to be automatic, sin for us. But orge and paragismos, we got to kind of work through in a healthy way. So all that to say, how do we practice anger without sinning?
I think that's just what you're trying to get at. Feeling it is not wrong. I think it's the next steps that we take with it that determine whether we cross the line into sinning. I think maybe if we can invite someone in if we're struggling with it, or in that moment, if we're not too angry, we can take a moment and point ourselves back to Jesus. I know in my own life, those moments when I can like take a step back from it, that's usually when something beneficial happens. But it's whether we can get
to
that step back.
It's hard.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And I think this is why the word practice comes in, right? Because the more that we try to practice this in a healthy way, the better we could get in real time to maybe do that. Like it's almost, I say for myself, like it's really hard to do it in real time when I'm angry. But like the more I try to be aware of it, like I could at least see my mind making the connections a little bit sooner to kind of get there. And
I think maybe like we have certain feelings that we can learn to discern that like if I'm feeling this, it probably means I'm getting closer. And if we can start discerning some of those things, we might get it a little bit before we hit like the tipping point.
Yep, absolutely. Good. So in that verse we read, it said, hey, don't let the sun go down. Don't give the devil a foothold. What does it mean when we're saying we're giving the devil the foothold with our anger?
I think it's when anger begins to win, or if it crosses over into that dominant emotion in our heart. I think we all know that feeling of fleeting anger. Like it was something, like you said, it was like that landmine. It went off. It was a big boom, but we're through it. But I think it's that anger that becomes the first thing that comes to the surface, no matter what we're experiencing. Now it's not just a blip on the radar. It's that dominant thing that every time someone looks at us, we're hit traffic, the line's too long at the store, we immediately go to anger, then I think it has begun to get a foothold. And again, I think it's your heart. It's weird because anger feels very physical, but I think it has to go back to the heart.
Yeah.
What's happening there?
And I think it comes back. I know we said this in a couple different episodes today, but like it goes back to then it affects me and other people primarily, right? And
Yeah.
it's going to be in my relationships all the time and dividing. And this is not what the Lord wants for us. So, what are the dangers? And I guess that's one of them. But what are the dangers of personally and then also communally letting anger just build up in our life and not practicing it and dealing with it?
So this is one I think it's going to look different person to person. For me, I actually repress anger really well. Um, but the danger in that is then when it actually gets bad enough for me to feel it, I am that landmine. I explode. I'm that last one. No one wants that. So we have the danger of that. But I also think for some people, anger seeps in. It becomes that dominant emotion that they move through life with. You
Yeah.
know, again, we know those people. We probably avoid those people
Yeah.
because we know that
Mhm.
everything that slightly goes wrong, they're gonna be annoying because they're mad.
Mhm.
And I think communally, it's an interesting idea, and I don't know that I've honestly thought that much about it, but I can imagine that a community leading out of anger just is not going to be very healthy, and it's probably going to be more likely to hurt others because it's so bent towards that anger.
Yeah, so much destruction could be done when anger is not handled well. So it's an area that we have to grow in. It's been said before that anger is a secondary emotion, right? That like it's often a response to other emotions in our life. You know, if I'm hurt by what somebody said, like anger can be an emotion. I don't get my way, you know, those kind of things. And I think when we talk about our idols, control, power, comfort, approval, like a lot of times anger can be a response to us not getting those things. It's maybe that orge anger of like something I want is being threatened.
Yeah.
And so like now I'm feeling that I have to defend it. I'm not getting the approval. So I'm not getting the control. I'm not getting the comfort, whatever. So how do we, when we're angry, how do we get to the thing beneath the thing? If anger is this secondary emotion, how do we find out what's underneath it?
Yeah, I mean, invite Jesus in, invite others in. Hopefully, if you're this far in discipleship pipeline, you've heard us talk a lot about gospel coaching, and this practice especially is going to help you get to the heart of what's underneath your anger. And if you're not sure exactly how to get there, pause this, go talk to your discipler, and you guys can do some gospel coaching examples.
Yeah, and that's the hope, right? That we would be able to preach the gospel to our anger or whatever that primary emotion is in that moment. We would be able to do that. So, two sides of a coin here on this next question. What do you say to the person who blows up often? You know, maybe the Thumis anger, boom, they just explode like a rocket ship, whatever. Or someone who suppresses their anger. Like, what would you say to each of those contexts?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, neither one is healthy. So for the person who blows up, I think it would just be an encouragement to stop, take a breath. Again, breathing. Breathing's really important. Sometimes if we stop and breathe, all of a sudden it doesn't look as dire as it did. Um, maybe it's a certain trigger or an understanding that can help them reduce the severity. And again, if you can get them stopped to the point where then they can gospel coach, that's good. But I think sometimes that just stop, breathe, figure out your triggers, those can help in the immediate. And then I think for the person who suppresses, I think it's just a conversation that like they're allowed to feel things and it's going to take time. Obviously, you don't just go from repressing to not repressing instantaneously, but giving them space also to like invite them into processing their feelings might be helpful. Of like, it's those leading questions of like, well, how is this making you feel? Like, what are you thinking about this? What is getting you to this? Why are you repressing your feelings?
Sure. Good
Stuff
questions.
like that. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Any habits that you would recommend that we can practice to help us from engaging in bad anger, so to speak, from letting anger become something that's destructive within our life?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of mentioned it once, but I think gospel coaching is a super helpful tool here. After practicing this for the last few years, I know myself, I am sometimes now able to catch myself in the moment.
Mhm.
Not always. Other times I am still working it through after the fact, but having that practice in place to point myself back to Jesus makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. So for one of our final questions here, we haven't talked about this aspect as much, but like there are things that we should get angry at. Like even if we go back to a little bit of lamenting, sometimes that lament over injustices that we see in the world can pair with anger. And like, yeah, we see this with Jesus with flipping the tables, right? People being taken advantage of and that kind of thing. How do we I don't know what the right word is, but how do we do that if that's something we normally don't do. Like if I examine the anger in my life and I realize, hey, it's all about what's going on in my life and the thing like, and there's no anger at evils of the world and injustice. Like, how do I get better at that? If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, this pairs with our chat that we had during lament, and I think we talked there about our hearts breaking for what breaks God's heart. And like you said, if everything that's making you mad is just my lunch was late, this line was long, I didn't get a parking spot, like there are bigger problems in the
Mhm.
world. I've had to have that conversation with
Sure.
people of like,
Mhm.
I'm sorry that's making you angry, but let's actually broaden our perspective a little bit. And I think it's just taking some time to look around for the things that are unjust and make you mad. And I think it is okay to start there. And then in health, if we move towards lament, that's a good process.
Yeah.
Because again, we don't want to stay mad and angry. But it is important to have those soft hearts that break when we encounter things in our world that are broken.
Mhm.
And yeah, I do think it is like look around for things that make you mad. That is a good place to start.
Yeah. Good. All right. So one last question for us. Our next series in this season, we're going to talk about relationships, and we'll see a lot of connections between our emotions and relationships. But what would you say to someone if they say, "Hey, like, I see in my life some relationships I have been ruined by anger, whether that's with family members or coworkers or whoever, friends. I've seen my anger be destructive." What's a word of hope or something that you would want to share with them today?
I think I would just say do some heart work before you just try and barge in and fix things.
Hmm.
I think we've all been around people who just try to fix themselves without inviting Jesus in, and that doesn't tend to be that successful.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe take a step back, invite Jesus in, see where he's asking you to grow, to change, and then if you can begin healing, I do think maybe with some discernment in time, see if you can seek forgiveness,
Yeah.
seek
Yeah. That's
restoration.
good.
But just give yourself time to heal and don't just rush into trying to like fix
Yeah.
something.
That's good. Awesome. All right. Well, that was an awesome series that we talked through forgotten emotions. I hope it's been helpful for you. And now we begin to practice these things a little better so we can keep getting better at them and honoring Jesus in those